All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Exit Liquidity. This week is episode 82, I believe, and we got a very special guest, Sami from Dinero. Thanks for joining us, man.
What up, guys? What up? Yeah, that was a sick intro.
Yeah, it always gets me hype. Always
Yeah.
gets me hype. It's fun stuff. Um, yeah, this one, I feel like this one's been a long time coming. I mean, you guys are DeFi OGs. Like we have kind of been through the ringer with all the different stuff that's been under your belt. Yeah, just lots of like robust, like I would even go as far to call it history by now. And the stuff that's going on with Dinero these days is insane, obviously. So lot to get into there. To start out, kind of to help set the scene a little bit, it would be good to hear a little bit of background from you. Kind of just like who you are, what brought you into crypto, what brought you to building what you're building today.
Yeah, I don't have like the greatest intro. I guess I'm a bit on the younger side. I've been in crypto since I was in high school, and and when I was in school, I started off with Conflux Network, that Chinese layer one. In Canada, I was working on it. And I was basically like doing analyst work for there, but it was a start. And then after that was helping a bit with Sushi and Masari and a few different DAOs and research groups, sort of just getting my feet wet. And then that's where I met my co-founder, Never, and we launched Redacted at the time, now Dinero, at the tail end of 2021. So no big TradFi story or how I got into crypto story. I guess it's the only thing I've ever known.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same for Cito and me, but I also do think that I definitely wouldn't downplay it. I mean, getting into crypto that early is like probably comes with a lot of different advantages. Was there something that like ticked you on to crypto to begin with? Was there like any sort of light bulb moment for you that was like oh shit, this is really cool. Like I need to get more involved?
um, I'd say like it was pretty profit driven to start, right? The 2017 ICO era was like pretty enticing, and I did all the bad ICOs. I didn't get any good ICOs, but you know, uh, I wouldn't say there's like one thing that necessarily like takes me off. I think like throughout time, there's been different verticals in crypto that have like gotten me very interested in the space because I think it's a very like broad topic now. Um, you meet people that are still stuck on NFTs or something, and I think like crypto as a whole, it's very easy to like fall into that rabbit hole. But I think that there's like different verticals in the space that really interest me, like L1s and DeFi and ETH staking, that all have their own backstory.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess a lot of it is at least for me, a lot of it was definitely profit driven at the beginning, and then I think that kind of dominoes into some of the more niche stuff that you have to be a little bit deeper in to even like get to, like some of the DeFi stuff we're at with these days. You have to be quite a few layers deep already, and only then can it kind of click.
Yeah,
So I guess that
I think
makes
I think
sense.
it's fair, right? Like, a lot of people want to experiment and just try things out, probably just for profit. And then as you get more involved in the space, you start building your own thesis of why you'd want to, work in the industry or spend more time on it than just trading, right? Um, yeah.
What was the thesis for you on going all in? I'm sure like most of us, your family members think you work for Bitcoin. You're glued to a screen for like 90% of the day. What was the reasoning and thesis for you?
Actually, the I remember like the first time it like clicked was ETH Waterloo in 2019. Um, it was you'd walk into University of Waterloo, and this is when like crypto conferences or nothing, it would be just like Vitalik walking around the conference, no one paying any attention to him. And then like one booth was like Uniswap, and then like Matic, and then like Aave. And it's just like all these like projects that are worth like billions now. They were all just there like having booths, and there was no grift at all. And when you hear about, Matic is what when you hear about like something like Matic that like scales Ethereum in like 2019, and people thinking like that far ahead, like back then, it's easy for it to get like um engraved in your head almost, right? Um because before, people would talk like very big and grand, especially in like 2017, people would talk like they're trying to solve the world with every project that comes out. But then when you sort of meet them like face to face, something like Aave or something like Uniswap, which just has this like, you can explain it in like one word or two words, but then like, you're hearing it from like Stanny or one of these guys like directly. It's pretty easy to get pilled. And I think, and then COVID happened. Um, and you literally couldn't do anything else except just like go on Twitter and see people talking about it. So um yeah, probably ETH Waterloo 2019.
Yeah, the conferences are always I feel like everyone's pill. That's
Yeah, but now I try not to go to conferences, just because they've taken such a weird turn. The
yeah.
Bitcoin conferences were always cool, but like the ETH conferences when they were first like starting up, definitely had like this like different vibe to them. And then I hear like a lot of people have the same story. I hear like Breakpoint in Lisbon like was one of like the first like Solana conferences, had that same sort of vibe also. So um I'm sure there's like still really cool conferences that are happening, but like I didn't go to Brussels this year, and I went to Singapore last year, and it was just like it probably gives off like more of a bad taste than it does a good taste. I think some of these bigger ones.
Yeah, you should definitely not go to any of the Dubai conferences. I think that those are kind of in a place like that, that's kind of where that stuff, at least as of recently, that's where that gets to be pretty what's the word? Inflated maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's not fun for me, that's for sure.
yeah.
Cool. Before we get into things here, there's a bit of a rite of passage we have on exit liquidity. Everybody everybody who's been in the space long enough obviously has had their fair share of not so pretty moments of being exit liquidity. And by now it's a rite of passage. It's the cost of tuition. So before we get into things, we have to get your favorite story of when you were exit liquidity in crypto.
It's probably pretty easy for me. I When Elon Musk tweeted the My Lady, um, I sold My Lady for like 7 ETH or something, and then it went to like 8 ETH right after I sold it, and I bought 3 more at 8 ETH, and then it just went to, well, now I think they're doing okay after the airdrops and stuff. But yeah, that was pretty brutal because it was like I finally timed the top or something, and then I like FOMO'd in it like the Pico top. Um so, and I was pretty good with NFTs before that, and then after that I decided not to do NFTs anymore. So yeah, that's probably the worst.
Yeah, that was a crazy day. I remember me and Cito were coping so hard. I remember
Yeah.
But did
because
you
we were
guys
like,
have
we'll bid. No, but we were like looking to bid before that. I think like down close like 1 ETH, and then he tweets it, and they're just they like run up to 8 before dropping down to 4, and we were like, damn, like we were just greedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
It's a good time though.
greed is the killer of us all.
Yeah. I want to start on the kind of redacted journey. I think most people in the space can put two and two together on where the name kind of came from. But I'd be curious what those kind of initial days were like with you and your co-founder, I assume, and um, yeah, how you guys decided to spin this whole thing up. I mean, I'd say your guys' branding with Redacted. I mean, Dinero's cool, but Redacted has just been such a cool brand over the years, and you guys have had your hands in a lot of different things, and it was always just awesome to see Redacted and whoever partnership pop up. As I'd be curious what those early days were like, how you nailed in on the name and kind of the start of that journey.
The name was well, okay. Like I think there's a few. That's like a multifaceted question, right? Like, um, the idea itself was pretty simple. The idea was always a stable coin, and um, the idea was always a stable coin. But the problem was that when we were okay, I think like the idea was inspired a lot by like Faye and Tribe and that whole launch, and it was actually a horrible launch. Don't get me wrong, but if anyone remembers Faye, I don't think so. But they raised a ton of money, right? And actually, because of the money they raised on the initial Genesis event, they were able to keep the project going as long as they did, right? Um, and then hacks and other things like were eventually the downfall. But the same concept from Faye could be applied using like an ohm fork, right? It's just an ohm fork is just was just a Faye TGE over a much longer period, right? And um and the first call I ever had with a VC about the idea, um, he explained to me that the idea was retarded, but the call was recorded, so he said redacted instead of retarded. Um, so that's where the name came from. Was like a VC telling me the idea was retarded,
Was it
and
a? Can you name who the VC was or no? I'd be curious.
no, no, no.
No, no, no.
I actually we're working with them, so
Oh, okay.
it's not so bad. They I think they just didn't understand it at first. And it's like when you're like raising for something, like the first few pitches are just like like completely brutal. Um, and then the cartel part came from just like differentiating from a DAO, and also just like the ownership aspect of it. I think it was cool to like everyone's like DAO or finance or something. So I think it was cool to like switch it up a little there. So that's where the name came from. And then in terms of what it was actually like in the beginning, it was like uh really bad in the sense that like I completely ruined my sleep. I still can't sleep properly. And we raised like um a ton of money between the public and private sale, right? I think between the two we raised around 75 million from Maven and some others. And just the concept of like I was always like someone that's like, start somewhere and then decentralize over time. Um and because there was so much interest in the project, um it accelerated our need to like really get all of the operational security in place. And because of that, like it was truly hectic. And while all of this was happening, you in a traditional company, you get funding, and then you build a team, and you get all of these things in order, and then you launch, right? Whereas with us, it all happened in like a 1 week, 2 week sort of time frame. And um, obviously, I wouldn't do that again. But the first time founder, you learn things. Like these are all part of the journey. So I actually can't look back and say I had any positive times from that from the launch period. It was just all madness.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sounds like you've gotten the launch process a little bit more under control, and obviously different from the way things are now, which is good to hear. Can you I do want to get into like what Dinero is and what makes it important, but I also think uh the redacted brand, as well as like kind of what you guys have been building over the years, has shifted a couple times, and a lot of those products were really interesting, were like cornerstones of DeFi for quite some time. Can you kind of break down from a product perspective, like what you guys set out to do from the beginning and kind of how it shifted from one thing to the next into what it is today?
Yeah, yeah. So I'd say like when we first started, um, there was even like a blog post that definitely our CMO took it down, but it was like a blog post about like how it could be, whatever you want it to be, in the sense that we, like I said before, like just had like this big grand vision, eventually do this like stable coin and bring in all this money and have a bunch of governance control everywhere. And then we realized that we were like falling victim to what I think like every crypto founder still to this day falls victim to, which is like huge grand idea, um something that'll bring billions of people into crypto. And obviously they never do that, and then you see with all of these projects they just like continuously um like uh reduce their expectations, and they become this like very niche product where they found like some PMF with a certain group of users, and that's just what they be in forever, right? um and then I think with us, we recognized that like pretty quickly, and we said, okay, like we're never gonna get to this like stage where we could do what we're doing now. I think like in terms of like IPX ETH and stuff, without like actually like starting very small. Um, and like I think like maybe to you that's like been in the space, like you could consider the stuff we did as like cornerstones, but they weren't, right? Like the fact of the matter is they were like very small attainable products where we were like coming in identifying like a pond and being like the sole owner of that pond, right, rather than like jumping into like a red ocean. And those products like ended up like making us what we are today because they generated revenue. We never had to spend any tokens on incentivizing them. So we were able to like keep runway very strong. They helped with the brand. I think a lot of people associated us with like building cool shit, whether it was like, you know, um, gonna push the needle for us in terms of adoption or like do anything in the grand scheme of things. No, but people thought it was cool. And we were able to build this like repertoire and chemistry as a team where we had many successful launches under our belt, all under the same brand or the same token, right? And then we realized that what we were doing was good, but there was like a very low glass ceiling, obviously, in terms of product breakthrough and narrative breakthrough. And that's when we started working on PXETH and what at the time was Dinero, now PXUSD. Um, and we sort of came like full circle back to like going for like the big going for the big shot, because I think that um it's very rare that you'll find like a project wants to launch like one token only and put all that stuff under like one token. But I think for us it ended up working out really well because we have basically the exact same team we did 2 years ago, um which is like very, very rare in this space. And we had like all these successful small scale launches. And then that's when we started talking with like Laser and some other institutions that sort of, came in, understood exactly what it is we're doing, saw the background of like, never misappropriating funds, which sounds like it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but it is. And we were able to like start again in terms of getting the stablecoin idea out there again, just now with like new support and a history, right? I think that's what like blocked us from doing it the first time around, was kind of like, who are these guys, like what are they doing? And we learned from the mistakes and the winnings of like the past, and like are putting it towards like this new idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's dope. That's a very interesting approach. I think that we don't see I can't think of any teams really that have taken that, of like starting off with an area you can dominate and really working at that, not having to worry about things like token incentives or a misaligned community or whatever it is, just really building a rock solid foundation as like a, not even a proof of concept, but sort of just a success story. And then from there, like shooting for the star. I mean, realistically, like with what Dinero is today, it's like way past anything way past like what we've heard of the addressable market for a lot of products in crypto right now. So to go from that to this is like it's it's a very big jump in my eyes. When did the idea first, like when do you guys first start thinking like, okay, like what we've done here is good, but we need to like think bigger? And like when did the idea of like first sort of looking to institutions first, when did that start to creep in and start to make more sense?
When Terra blew up. Actually, like I make it sound like I make it sound like it was all like calculated and coordinated, but the truth is like we've spent like 2 years just trying to like survive, um, which is fine. I think like all startups, all they do is like a startup's goal should just be to survive until they get like the opportunity like handed to them, right? Um, and I think that I talked a bit about this on my Twitter already, but I think like being like so CT native, um, with like and aligning yourself with like the wrong type of people is like very exhausting, and doesn't reap like it doesn't bring you that much in terms of value, right? Um, I think like again, like thinking like a traditional startup, you want to have like a more concentrated and aligned group of like stakeholders, and those stakeholders who have the bigger stake are actually the ones who will bring more value to you, right? And in the real world, when a VC invests in you, it's on a 5 year, 10 year plus horizon, and they come into the company, they help you with things, and they do all these different things for you. And I think that there's like certain people in our community that stuck around after Terra blew up because we were um, victims of that with the four pool and everything. Um, and I recognized that there was like now this like concentrated set of people. Like after Terra blew up, like everyone disappeared. There was like whatever, like 3 messages in the Discord a day or something. um, All time low price and all this stuff. And I recognize like those certain groups of people. And at the same time, uh, through personal connections with the team and all of this stuff, there was the opportunity to like get more involved on the institutional side, um, with Laser and Galaxy, and we sort of just went to the drawing board, took what we have in terms of like people that can bring something to the table, and started new with that, right? Um, and now the Discord is alive again, and we have like a very good community, I'd say now, in terms of people that just like trust the vision, are supportive, and we have like institutional stakeholders now, that can like get us in front of the right group of users, that are thinking on multi-year time horizons instead of momentum trading and scalp trades and all this sort of stuff, right? um, which is very very hard to find in crypto, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a challenge to say the least to find and cultivate talent like that. Um, so to have that on your side is a huge deal, I think, especially for how long you guys have been around, everything you've been through. For those who haven't seen the announcements yet or any of the podcasts or anything like that, I think it would be good to get a quick breakdown of what Dinero is now and what you guys are trying to do. Maybe just 60, 90 seconds or less.
Yeah. So Dinero is what we're calling the yield BASEPLATE of Ethereum, right? um I think that there's this tribalism growing in the space of commoditizing and monetizing Ethereum, where a lot of people are coming in and trying to extract as much value as possible out of it. And there's an over indexing on applications around it, and there's an under indexing on infrastructure around it, right? So what we're trying to do is build, like I said, the yield base plate of Ethereum, where we can build a simple composable staking solution for Ethereum and eventually other assets, where people from all different types of backgrounds can come and build on top of it, and we can have like a wide set of users that are using Dinero and PXETH and not even knowing it, right? So that could be layer twos who want branded ETH, a branded ETH solution native to their chain. It could be institutions who want a compliant, institutional friendly version for whatever applications they seem fit for with it. Um, it could be dexes on Ethereum that are looking for, like high yielding solutions for liquidity providers. And um, it could even be us, for example, right? Like finding very safe and composable collateral for our stablecoin project. Um, so yeah, I think like the main like keywords there, um, composability, security, and um, and institutional grade slash scale sort of products coming out of the Dinero brand.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, can you so the branded LST thing is um a bit unclear to me, I think. Can you explain a little bit more about how that would work or like even maybe even why a brand would come and want to make their own LST with you guys?
Yeah. So don't we haven't been talking about it, but obviously I think like now that we're doing the rebrand, I think it should be talked about a little bit in terms of what the rest of the year looks like for us. Obviously IPXETH is a branded LST, um, in the sense that it's another institution white labeling the tech from us and slapping their own brand on it. And when it comes to like a layer two, for example, I'm trying to think if there's any that we've announced. We're working with like 10, 15 plus chains and scaling solutions to build something where um okay, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant. So there's two things to consider, right? One is the Mantle Math Blast ETH success story, which was a huge success story. And then the other thing to consider is uh the recent like flood of layer twos that have hit the market and how hard it is to really like plant your flag in the space, um, and build sustainable revenue drivers that are not um, the the these indexers and the word is the word is blanking on me, um, sequencers. That is not a sequencer because every single one of them has promised their VCs that the sequencer is going to get decentralized, right? um, So how do you do that, right? You all these chains, and even when I'm working on bear chain stuff, I see it time and time again. All of these chains realize that it boils down to not volume or users or anything, but it boils down to native assets because native assets are actually what will be sticky to the chain in terms of it's hard for you to go and migrate. It's very easy for you to go and bridge your TVL out or for you to add an RPC to your MetaMask and start using another chain, but it's very hard to detach a native asset from your chain, right? And ETH is obviously the biggest crypto native asset there is, other than Bitcoin. And in terms of like using it for collateral and kickstarting a whole ecosystem. And when you see people talk about like native yield on Twitter, let's say like Blast, right? When they talk about native yield, they talk about it from a UX perspective. Oh, like how nice would it be if you could just hold ETH on this chain and earn yield? But the truth of the matter is that what they're doing is they're taking as much ownership of ETH as they can, um, slapping whatever poster they want on it. But then other builders can look at that and see like, oh, like look how much ETH they've attracted to the chain. I could totally go start a CDP stablecoin or a perps dex that's collateralized by crypto assets or any of these different things, right? So I think we recognize that relatively early, and we're gonna like this is gonna be the push for like the rest of the year for us. So you're gonna see a bunch of names throughout the year come out in terms of groups that we're doing this with, um, some pretty big ones. And what we're doing is we're coming to X chain, let's say, and we're building X ETH for them, where in collaboration with Layer Zero, which I'll explain later. And what's happening is users depositing ETH or whatever other asset on the destination chain. We build that reserve of ETH. We're natively minting the branded ETH asset on the destination chain. We take those batched ETH, we bring it back, we stake it with our validators, and we are generating the yield and abstracting away the whole validator process for them so that they don't actually have to run an LST because it's a pain in the ass. And passing that yield back to the users who hold like the branded asset, right? Um, and I already know some questions that'll come up. It's like, oh, are people interested in LRTs and restaking and stuff like that? And like obviously we're gonna like we have a restaking strategy with PXETH where we're working with some of these chains to like natively restake the entire validator set that we have, similar to like EtherFi, um, so that people can like still get exposure to like the restaking stuff. But I think in general that a lot of these chains that we're working with are thinking again on the long term and are kind of seeing now like a lot of TVL like flee from the restaking side of things. Um, I just want like a clean, pure ETH yield solution that they can use to like, build their brand and also like build their reserve of ETH so that they can attract more builders.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I guess the institutional rail part of it was kind of like at least from my perspective, that was like the meat and potatoes of the pitch, and then the branded LST stuff I didn't really pay too much attention to. But it sounds quite a bit. I'm a huge fan of Sanctum on Solana. It sounds pretty similar to the stuff that they're doing over there, kind of like taking that barrier to zero of having to launch of how you launch an LST, not needing to spin up your own validator or anything like that. And yeah, the opportunities for that are pretty crazy. It would be really good to have something like that on ETH. That actually, this is like kind of off topic, but I know like Solana and all the Solana and ETH debate is all over CT these days, and obviously, with what Dinero is, with what Redacted has always been, like it's always been, I think very, at least for me, very top of mind when it comes to ETH and ETH DeFi. Do you have a take on Solana at all? Do you have a sentiment towards that ecosystem?
I love Solana. I love alt L1s. I think that it's just like okay, personally I love alt L1s. I use them all the time. In terms of like a business though, um it's hard for me to be like, let's just go to Solana. But like, this is some people do, right? They're like, oh, we're on Solana, we're going to Ethereum like a year ago, and then now they're like, oh, we're on Ethereum, we're going to Solana, right? Um, if you don't have like any edge to like provide users of that ecosystem, then like what's the point of going there, right? Like there's no point in us doing PX Sol today. Maybe we will do it one day, but like there's no point in us coming and doing PX Sol because like we don't have any edge there, right? There's people that spend their night and days keeping up the track and talking with everyone in that ecosystem, and it's very segregated. And it's not like apples to apples compared to like going from one L2 to another. It's all very similar. That's just what ETH is becoming. What Cosmos always wanted to be. And like Solana is like its own world with its own set of like users that want something completely different, and that's the truth, right? And like that's why you're not really seeing, there's a lot of people who say like, oh, like Solana DeFi is like overdue, right? Like why bid ETH DeFi when you can bid like Solana DeFi? The truth is like the users don't want DeFi there, right? They want memes, and that's not to say like I don't think like Cheeto and you said Sanctum is dope. Some of these others will like not get success, but it's like it's very hard for you to like take something you've been building for like 2-3 years to like appeal to like one group of users, and like take it to like another ecosystem which just wants something completely different, right? um so all that to say that I think that like the tribalism will probably only get stronger, and you'll start to see like the user behaviors on all of these different L1s specifically behave like very differently than their counterpart, right? Which is not the case with like layer twos, right? And that's kind of like what Ethereum has in its favor is that Solana has one shot with the with Solana mainnet, whereas Ethereum has like 100 plus like funded teams and projects that like all have the opportunity to be like the Solana of Ethereum. So like there's 100 bullets in the chamber for ETH, which is in the long term like a very like reasonable bet to take in terms of like where you want like your home base to be. um yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a totally fair take. It's interesting to hear that you're a big fan of alt L1s and you like spend a good bit of time on them. Which ones do you like find yourself interacting with
Well,
regularly?
actually, like in terms of like my personal time, like I spend a lot of time on like making sure bear chain is a real thing, right?
Mm.
I when I'm in Toronto, I'm working out of their office, I'm helping them with the incubator, help them with the main chain design when I could, when I could help in terms of actually bringing something to the table. And I think that like I think that like that's a I think like that's like a great example of like you don't have to be like stuck up on Ethereum. And I think like bear chain is like a chain that could exist, that'll just have its own sort of like niche, and offering that it can provide users more tailored around the DeFi liquidity side of things. um so beyond just like using them, like I'm actually like helping you actually create one. And uh and then other than that, like I was like pretty big on AVAX. I thought that was going to be big. But I see they're working on some stuff now, changing subnets to L1s, and all these guys, like their heads are in the right place, and I think that they will find traction, with the right changes. And then like all that to say, like Ethereum is like in some metrics not even the biggest chain, right? Like Tron is what most people in the world use for USDT payments, um, which is big in like third world countries, which is like Ethereum's dream almost, right? So that's not even to say that like Ethereum is the king and all these others are solving one problem or the other. Like some chains are actually doing much better than Ethereum in terms of like stuff that like matters to the ETH community.
Yeah, is Bear Chain a place that you guys are gonna get involved in on the Dinero redacted side of
Yeah,
things?
it'll be like a second slash new home for Dinero.
Have you guys like put out any information on what your plans are there, or
Uh,
some?
Not yet, because right now the only thing my head is focused on the Dinero side is IPX ETH, pushing that, making sure some of these branded LSTs come out the door and are a big success. And when it's bear chain's time, then like we will like be there, and unveil all the plans we have there. But yeah.
Just just Dinero or Hidden Hand as well, because I think obviously there's some pretty obvious like synergies there between the whole proof of
So
liquidity system and a bribe market.
so Bearchain has its own bribe market that is like building like for the BGT market itself. Just like the way BGT distributions work is like not as simple as what Hidden Hand does, which is like works around like a snapshot or voting smart contract or something, right? Um, and BGT distribution is obviously a different. BGT itself is not like a VE token or even an X token or something like that. It's its own kind of design. But we're gonna bring everything there, right? So like Hidden Hand will be on Bear Chain, but I think it'll be for the other bigger projects on the chain. Maybe someone's launching a DEX there, money market, or all the things that you usually see Hidden Hand integrated into on the application layer. um PXETH is obviously the main focus for Dinero. Like we're going to be doing that. um we're going to be like going very hard on that on the bear chain side, because I think proof of liquidity opens up like I think like we will be able to like play the proof of liquidity game very well just based on our history. So that'll be like a big focus for us too in terms of growing liquidity on the retail side. And yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think knowing that you've most people can see that you've been pretty like outspoken and like involved with Bear Chain. So knowing the synergies there is definitely like exciting. Another thing to look forward to with that launch. Given that you guys like this is a very recent announcement with the whole Dinero thing. I mean, the rebrand was what, like last week, and then the PXETH stuff, IPXETH stuff is, I think, maybe last Friday. So I can imagine things are like pretty chaotic on your end, but I'm curious as to like what the rest of the year looks like for you, or looks like for Dinero in like an ideal scenario. What are your guys' like main priorities at this point?
The main priorities now are in terms of like the main priorities now are recreating the success story that will be IPXETH, just in like a bunch of different angles, right? So I think, like I said, like recreating it with layer twos, recreating it in terms of collateral, recreating it with other institutions, and uh, I said this on another podcast, but I think that by this time next year, I think it's very likely that we will have, hundreds of millions, if not a billion plus in TVL, and 90 to 95% of that will probably not even be in PXETH itself, right? Obviously, it will be in the background, but I think that if we can like scale ourselves to a point where we have like 50 plus, whatever, 20 plus distribution channels, with a bunch of different stakeholders that are pushing it for us, then I think we can get into a stage where we can be like, scaling to the billion plus in TVL without having to like massively dilute ourselves in terms of emissions, or do some like point scam, or pay off a bunch of people to like deposit TVL in their platform, and all of these like really unsustainable things which like people are going to get burned on. uh I think like we've like really cracked the nut in terms of strategy, in terms of creating those distribution channels and leaning on other people to like help us get there.
Yeah, I think those are some good points from the fake TVL and the scam point systems. I think we're on the tail end of people realizing that that's just not going to work. And I think one thing I think people would be interested in knowing specific to IPXETH is like uh, the role that your institutional partners are playing from kind of top to bottom on how this comes to fruition for IPXETH.
Right. um I'll start with Galaxy. Galaxy is running the institutional validator set. So when ETH comes in from the KYC party, Galaxy is the one that's running the validator set. Their role is very simple. um Laser is obviously like the main partner here, and Laser Digital is like the crypto subsidiary of Nomura Group, um, Nomura Securities, which is 400 billion plus in AUM, and Laser Digital is like Laser Asset Management. That's their role, right? So they help their clients with like digital asset management, right? So that comes down to custody, structuring of funds, obviously, onboarding people, onboarding clients. Um, like they have a liquid fund, they have a venture fund, they have their obviously like trusted OTC desk. um, they run the entire institutional side of it, and what we have done, actually, what our role is to build IPXETH to what they need it to be, right? And their applications of IPXETH. So that could be in like a variety of things, right? If someone if one of their clients comes to them and says, I want ETH exposure, IPXETH is meant to like solve that for them, right? And it's composable enough, and it's compliant, more importantly, enough to be utilized in a ton of different ways that go beyond just like uh, some like KYC wrapper token that you see like a lot of people like come out with, right? Um, Yeah. So really what it is we are the service provider, in the sense that we've built IPXETH as a compliant version of PXETH for them, because this is the design that they like, and they think is sustainable. We brought in Galaxy to run those validators for us, so that they don't have to trust, some kid in his mom's basement. And we give it to them as a complete offering, and we can lean on their, you know, gigantic sales team and their like gigantic team in general and based office to like push this product out to like all of their clients.
And what is the kind of pitch sort of been on the institutional side? I'd be curious to hear your take on, because IPX ETH is supposed to be an alternative to like vanilla ETH ETFs, and I'm sure you have some takes on kind of the demand we've seen for that product, the vanilla product, versus kind of the general interest amongst institutions on like a yield bearing version.
Yeah. So like one thing that's important to note is that I'm not a licensed broker and I'm actually not
Yeah.
able to like solicit the fund. But I could tell you from the perspective of what people have been telling us of what they like about it, right? Not
Yeah.
me soliciting the fund. Um, so the thing is that a lot of people that are getting involved with this and got the initial capital together to like make this thing a real thing, um, is that the family offices and like um, uh, you're gonna hear me pause a lot to make sure I know what I'm saying. um, the family offices and other groups around them, uh, half of them have digital assets on the book, like ETH mostly or Bitcoin, and then half of them like didn't, right? And what we noticed with both of those parties is whether they had ETH on the books or not, is that they knew exactly what was going on, right? They knew about Eigenlayer, they knew about Lido, they knew about the ETFs that were coming, they knew about like I don't know what's like some Ponzi. They know about like Solana meme coins on their personal books. They're probably punting them. A lot of them actually knew what we were doing. Well, not as much as like those other four, but like a lot of them knew what we were doing, right? And even though they knew exactly what was going on, because you know they have some analyst or two or three analysts that are part of these teams that are like just spend all day looking at this stuff. It could be one of us, right? Um, they couldn't get involved, right? So the spot ether ETF, like what problem does it actually solve? Because the rails into spot ether are already there, right? Like yes, this is like a thing for retail, I understand that, and I'm not saying that it's not a great thing, but there was never the rails into like a compliant ether staking solution. And what we've built is, you know, if you are one of these family offices or uh whatever, like trading conglomerate or something, right? And you want to buy gold, right? Your due diligence process is, well, let's say like an oil structured product, right? Your due diligence process, you already know what that is, right? Who's our counterparty? Let's do the paperwork with them. I know who to call. I know what broker to call, and they're gonna get me this product. And I know the return profile, and I know all of these things, right? Um, the crypto due diligence process is not like that. The crypto due diligence process is like, yeah, let me just message someone and see if they're legit or not, and I'll just send them money or something, right? Um, we were able to like put a very substantial amount of money together by just like providing an institutional rail into this stuff, right? For anyone who's like interested in it, they're calling Laser. They know how to like do the DD process for these funds, and it's as simple as a phone call, right? Um, and it's very TradFi, it's very suit. But like now they don't have to set up, you know, this like whatever fire blocks custody and talk to their lawyers and make sure that's okay. And you know, we're gonna punt, you know, 10 mil into this like eigenlayer pool, but oh, actually, if a deposit comes from Tornado Cash, we have to get out. Like none of that stuff that's never going to work, right? It's never going to work. We have to, if we want to get like DeFi to a place where the masses are actually using it and trusting it, we have to comply to their standards, so that we can onboard institutional money, so that retail money can trust DeFi again. Because in some ways, the DeFi bull run came too soon. Um, in the sense that we didn't fix any of the problems with DeFi. We didn't fix the hacks. We didn't fix the custody problem. We didn't fix the commingling issue. We didn't fix the trust issue, right? Like the bull run came back with the Bitcoin ETFs, and DeFi was still the exact same as it was before. And now there's even more issues, multi-chain issues and fragmentation and all that stuff. So the only way we're going to progress the industry forward is if we take a step back, comply to what these family offices and big trading conglomerates want in terms of like onboarding, so that we can bring that capital in. Otherwise, like, they're going to stick with like spot solutions, and not be able to like explore like the cool side of Ethereum, which is actually the fact that there's a completely uncorrelated source of yield attached to it, right?
Yeah. And so for the yields that institutions would be getting, what are those numbers? Are they just base ETH yields,
Yeah.
or
It's not base ETH. So the nice thing about our two token system that we have, I'll explain it very shortly. Ether comes into the system, it's all staked. You receive back PXETH, which is not receiving any yield. And if you stake PXETH for APXETH, you receive the Ethereum yield, right? So everyone who's in PXETH is sacrificing the Ethereum yield to the APXETH holders. But there's an incentive to hold PXETH in that the treasury that we've been building as Redacted/Dinero for the past 2 years. We're one of the biggest influence. We have the most influence over Aura through our delegate vote. We're one of the biggest holders of Convex, all of these other DeFi scams. You can we use those to like influence a ton of yield and push a ton of yield towards PXETH, so that there's an incentive for the more advanced user to farm those opportunities. And then there's a like a yield arbitrage slash yield abstraction that goes on between the two tokens, APXETH and PXETH. IPXETH is a wrapper on APXETH, and we've been the highest yielding LST in the market with no points, no rehypothecation of assets, no leverage, nothing, for 6 months, and we've only been on the market for 6 months. We range between 8 to 12% APY, and that's what got a lot of funds interested in this product, is because they're able to like get exposure to not only the Ethereum yield, but indirectly get exposure to the DeFi yields without having to actually enter the DeFi markets, because we are putting all of that yield towards PXETH itself, right? So that excess in yield is piling on into IPXETH.
And so in terms of the relationships across, IPXETH, APXETH, and PXETH, when the assumption is that there's going to be more IPXETH, what does that kind of do to the rest of
to the yield?
To the yield and to the rest of the players in the PXETH kind of circle?
Yeah.
And will there be like fungibility between all these different versions? I'm assuming IPXETH won't ever enter the DeFi world, or how will it?
No, IPXETH is like the most compliant thing you've ever seen. So the question is, like, hundreds of millions of dollars IPXETH works, it piles onto APXETH. Doesn't that dilute the yield for everyone, right? The answer is no, because while we were designing this, we recognized that we can't prop up the PXETH side incentive as fast as we can prop up the APXETH side. This happened with other two token projects like Frax and stuff, right? But I think that the nice thing we have to our advantage right now is the restaking market, which, again, a PXETH is always going to be this game of like staying on top of what the users want in terms of yield and providing it to them so that that incentive exists, right? Let me explain this concept. What we will do for V2, I think by the end of the year, if not maybe a little bit later, is all the ETH in the system, once it's staked with us, will also be restaked, right, on the back end. And then what we will do is we will distribute all of the restaking yield from the AVSs that we're working with on these branded LSTs with the L2s, to PXETH holders, and then keep the same Ethereum yield going to the APXETH holders. So what we'll have is two differentiated, well, not that differentiated, but two different sources of yield that are coming in. And if hundreds of millions of dollars piles in onto the APX ETH side of things, you're going to have a crazy arbitrage opportunity to farm PX ETH because all of that restaking yield is getting passed back to just PX ETH itself, right? So at any time we could either be the highest LST or the highest LRT, and that should be a gap that gets closed in an efficient market, which we're not in, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think
So
that's a
that's
really
like how
good
we're thinking about it.
explanation.
That's how we're thinking about it. I get this question every time. I'm like, like what if the institutions like dilute my yield? And I don't think that'll be the case because we recognize what retail wants, right? Retail wants like they want like the new flavor of the month. And with PXETH, we're able to like constantly provide that and give those opportunities to the PXETH holders. So that like the more money that comes into APX actually ends up becoming more of an opportunity for PXETH to, even out the ratio.
And when you bring on branded LSTs, I'm assuming you can kind of also do branded LRTs in some way. Or
Yeah.
like would that 2 token model be pushed towards the branded side of things, the branded ETH side of things?
All of them have been like very different integrations. Some of them want a rebasing 1 token, some of them want the 2 token model, some of them like they all want something different. We would never like put ourselves in a position where we are messing up the system, right? Even though eventually it'll become a permissionless system where other people can just do whatever they want on it. In terms of like breaking through this in terms of like breaking through to the masses, we can design our launches and our roadmap to be in a way where we're getting the most out of the system, so that eventually it doesn't matter what the yield number is or anything. We just have the best product on the market. But like obviously I'd be foolish to say that like our edge isn't in the yield right now.
Yeah, that was a good explanation. We did that quickly. I think people can understand things from there. I think that's pretty much all I have. I will say I was gonna comment on just the beginning of the sort of journey, and I've from what I know, you kind of have to have like all of these investor calls, and you're doing a bunch of different things, and some things are working, some things aren't, and I think you guys have proven to have like a lot of grit that a lot of founders and teams probably wouldn't have had. You probably would have seen a lot more sunset and spin up something else across across most other founders' journey. So I just want to say it's pretty awesome to see you guys come out of some of the ashes and into what you guys are now.
Appreciate that, man. Journey's not done. I'm sure we're gonna run into a bunch of issues eventually.
It's quite the story already, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize that. If they don't, they certainly will over the next couple months, next couple years. Cool. We can start to wrap up here. Before we do so, Sammy, I just wanted to give you the floor in case you have any closing remarks, anything that you think our audience or the people should know about Dinero, about you, any calls to action you have. Now would be a great time to let the people know.
So the migration is open for all the butterfly holders into Dinero now. We did some small cosmetic changes and staking changes that people wanted for the tokenomics. All the links have changed, so be careful for phishing links. There's some out there. The new Twitter, which has the link tree to all the links you need, is Dinero_XYZ. So I would usually start at the Twitter. We also changed the URL to just Dinero.xyz, so you can find everything on the website or the Twitter. And just be careful in terms of the migration stuff, because I know obviously like changing the name and everything opens up like new attack vectors. So that's the only thing I'd flag.
Yeah, definitely important to stress that. Can never be too careful. Only interact with official accounts and all that fun stuff. Cool. That was episode 82. Thanks again, Sammy, for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
82,
Looking
damn.
forward
How long have
to
you guys been doing it?
doing it for a while.
19 months now. We started
Damn.
January of 2023.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, been a while, but it only took us 82 to get to Dinero. That's what I think.
Not
We
bad.
made good time.
Not bad.
All right.
Cool. Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks again, Sammy.